My name is Howard Chang. I'm a psoriasis advocate. I write a blog for Everyday Health called The Itch to Beat Psoriasis. I also am a social ambassador for the National Psoriasis Foundation and also part of their advocacy network in the Western region. I started blogging for psoriasis on a site called Health Talk about 11, 12 years ago. And the site just was starting out with some patients that were blogging, so I said, I was at a point where I was really struggling with my skin disease and had started doing a little bit better and thought that it would be a great opportunity to share my experiences living with psoriasis. When I first started, there were very few people who were blogging. There wasn't really that much social media at the time. And so it was really an unmet need that I saw. And I also saw that psoriasis, being a skin disease, was the kind of condition that people would try to hide from and maybe stay behind doors, be withdrawn socially. So I thought writing was a great way, especially as the internet was developing, to get into people's living rooms and to speak to people who were feeling very alone with the condition and really struggling on their own. I never really thought about being Chinese or being Asian and having psoriasis. I just thought, I have psoriasis and I want to share my story. But it's true, just in general, in the media, Asian Americans are not represented, especially out here in the West Coast, where a lot greater percentage of population is Asian, and we don't really see that represented in the media. So I definitely agree with that there are fewer Asians out there and people who are minorities who are advocating. I go to conferences, advocate with other advocates or psoriasis conferences, and there are a few Asians. So I think it's something that I've become more and more aware of, and am proud to kind of be in the vanguard or to really get that going. And hopefully others will step into the gap as well. Online resources are great. And there are also groups that may be meeting locally with the National Psoriasis Foundation or other organizations, advocacy organizations. But definitely the foundation is the big one that I and other advocates are part of. And also just online resources, getting online. There's so many more resources now than there were when I started blogging. And it's really incredible that there are advocates from all different walks of life and backgrounds that you can connect with, that you can talk to, that you can tweet or on Instagram or Facebook and so forth, to make that connection. Because sometimes it's not that easy to do it locally or even with your own family. I volunteer at the National Psoriasis Foundation, and just recently I got more involved with advocacy and legislative work. Last few years I've gone to Sacramento, which is our state capital here in California, and we've worked on different healthcare bills that are primarily related to access to care, prescription costs, benefits, things like that, because there's a wealth of new drugs and options for people with psoriasis. But unfortunately, some people can't afford them, or they don't have access to them, or they don't know about them. And sometimes the legislation and just the way that the healthcare system is just so complicated that only anyone can really figure out. But it's inhibiting people from being able to get the treatments that they really could use and need. So I started in Sacramento, and just this March, I was able to go to Capitol Hill as well, which was an awesome experience. It was the first time I was able to do that. But I've done about 4 or 5 state advocacy days, as well as the Capitol Hill Day with the National Psoriasis Foundation in March. The foundation is the largest advocacy group in the world. It represents the 8 million people in the States who have psoriasis. They're based out of Portland, but they're really a national organization, and they have an incredible website, and that's a great place to start. It's www.psoriasis.org, so it's very easy to remember. And they have pages there for all kinds of things. There's a patient navigation center that you can ask questions about anything. And there was also an advocacy page, and it's a great way to just get started to see what are some ways that you can get involved, getting on a mailing list, writing your legislators, get involved in some local events, that kind of thing can be all found on the website, and you can get connected with staff there or any of the advocates like myself who volunteer with the foundation. I used to think that way too, and government just seems like a big mess, and do they really do anything? It's this gridlock, but healthcare is one of those issues that we can't afford not to speak up about because it affects our lives, and not just our own lives, but we need to raise our voices to help others as well. And so the meetings I've had at the different legislative offices and staff have been really incredible. They're people. You realize that they're people like you and like me who have maybe relatives or friends who have different conditions. Many of them we talk to, they say, yeah, I know someone with psoriasis, or I know someone with arthritis, and this affects them too. And when you make that connection, that human connection, it does make a difference. They remember you, and they'll think of you as the legislation comes up. Yeah, step therapy is one of the first issues that we dealt with here in California, and I think we might be a little ahead of other states in this. But step therapy has to do with insurance making you fail certain medications first before you can try the one that is prescribed for you by your doctor. And so they call it fail first for that reason. It's usually cheaper medications. It's not always. It may be the deal that the insurance provider has with the pharmaceutical companies, or just their cost structure, but there's a tendency that you have to go through these other medications first. Now the problem with that is that if you're starting with something that may not be effective for you, or maybe that you even tried in the past, but because you've changed insurance providers, that you're not going to get better on that. And for some conditions like arthritis, you may actually end up starting to lose joints, or you may lose health permanently and not be able to get that back. So step therapy, if the doctor says, yeah, you do need to start with step one, then that's great, but it's between you and the doctor and what the doctor thinks, and insurance should not get in the middle of that. Yeah, I would love to believe that when I'm in the doctor's office and what we talk about and decide is what's going to happen for my health. But unfortunately, there are other people in the room. They're hidden, but there's someone who's holding the purse strings with the insurance provider. There may be a pharmacy benefit management company. There may be others who are having a say in whether the decisions that are made between the doctor and myself will actually be carried out or not. So I'll give you an example. This last year I had one drug that was prescribed to me, and the insurance provider said they're not going to cover it, even though it was a psoriasis drug, because I was on another psoriasis drug. And the whole point for them was that, well, there's no literature to say that these two medications would work together. But when you have a severe condition like myself, you need to be creative, and it may not be well studied, the combinations, but the doctor needs to have the full toolkit in order to kind of treat. And so that was a completely frustrating conversation with the insurance. We petitioned and we appealed multiple times, but eventually just gave up and got it straight from the manufacturer. Another time I wanted a phototherapy light unit, a home unit, which is only a few $1,000s, but again, they said no. We went through all the appeals process. I ended up buying it out of pocket with the help of friends and family. So there are many times that you have to find a way because it's your health, but you don't always get from insurance the coverage that the doctor would like you to have and the medications that you need. First of all, I want people to know that there are others who are going through that themselves. You know, before, when I was with a different insurance provider, I never had any of these issues. I think maybe just their system, that if the doctor prescribed it, I got it. And when I moved out here and I got into a new insurance system, then I started having to go through pre-authorizations and all of these issues that I never had to go through before. So first of all, that there are others who are going through it too. And patient advocacy groups is one way. The foundation that we mentioned, the National Psoriasis Foundation, they have staff, they have resources to help deal with insurance issues, which is one of the biggest issues that they deal with when they work with patients. And so that there are people who are advocating and people who can speak up for them and who can help them navigate this very complex system on how to get their medication, how to get the help they need to get better. Yeah, when I was in Capitol Hill, I was talking to our advocacy staff at the National Psoriasis Foundation, and what I gathered from them is that these issues are so complex, and that if you try to change one part of the system, it affects another part, and they're trying to be as careful as possible to not affect the system in a negative way by getting one thing and then maybe hurting another area. So I think that the areas that we've been advocating for, like removing step therapy, capping the costs of prescription drugs, especially maybe spacing them out through the year, getting assistance for those. Those are kinds of issues that can increase access to care. And so that patients, especially with those with chronic illness who need medication and who are getting they're getting more research and better medications, but they cost a lot, and so they're not able to get them, that there's a way for them to get those medications. But that said, I think we've come a long way, because I remember the days where if you have a pre-existing condition, you could forget about getting insurance individually as a family. But I think that the system is still struggling to support those with chronic illness because of the costs involved. And exchanges, they are struggling with costs as well. So I don't know if I have the answer, but trying to understand just from a patient advocate perspective, it seems way beyond me. Yeah, I'm hopeful that the patient voice gets elevated more and more. It seems that in the past that the doctors, pharmaceutical companies, that everyone was impacting the system and getting what they needed out of it, and the patient was just passively receiving whatever was decided for them. And now that we recognize that the patient's voice is so important to legislation, to how we craft the message, and also in the decision making. In the past, it was, well, the doctor knows it all. He's going to prescribe you what you need, and you just take it and you do it. And that's how I grew up. But now it's a collaborative environment where there's so much information on the internet now. There's so many people that we can talk to and collaborate with. We're not doctors. I'm not a medical doctor, but I know my condition. I know myself and my health better than anyone. And so for me to have a voice in that, and then also to just be speaking into these other arenas as well, whether it's in legislation or in just how we're talked to. I mean, sometimes we're talked to in ways and language that is offensive or just not sensitive. I think these are all areas that the patient voice can be elevated and have more impact. So my column is on everyday health. It's called The Itch to Beat Psoriasis. And my primary concern is emotional and spiritual healing. So I write a lot about the emotions of living with chronic illness and living with psoriasis. I also have other areas that I'll write about, like relationships or just all those impacts that a disease can have on you that is more than just treating the disease itself. And sometimes I do talk about the latest treatments, and I talk about medications and things like that, but I usually relate it to just the whole person, and that's my goal, is that there's a holistic healing for the person, and whether there's a cure or that the disease goes away or not, that we can live a full and active life as we would desire to. I think mental health and quality of life are issues that we're talking more and more about, is we're not just treating a physical condition, but that physical condition, it's almost like a war that we're fighting, and that it never ends. It's a day after day battle, and so that kind of battle wears on you. It can be frustrating. People with psoriasis deal with chronic itch a lot of times, deal with treatments that aren't working as well, and so that wears on you. There's the fear of the unknown. It's an autoimmune condition, and inflammation can flare up at any time, and so all these have been shown to produce depression and anxiety, even suicidal ideation, and so forth. So some things that I do for myself to kind of keep calm or to kind of help with my anxiety is pray. I'm a pastor, and so I really believe in kind of that quiet time, and to pray and to gain perspective. If my body is not doing well, if my outer world's not doing well, I can do something about my inner world, and I can find refuge there. And so I kind of will go deeper within. And the worse my condition is, the worse my health is, the deeper I go inside. But I also like to do other things like exercise. I run 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm very grateful I don't have arthritis like some of my fellow advocates. So I get out there and exercise and play with my kids. I have hobbies. I just started roasting coffee and making espresso. Just little things that kind of keep my mind off work and off my health, that kind of thing. I have a dog. I take him out for a walk. Take a bath, and just use some oils that will help with my skin and relax me. There's all kinds of ways, I think, to kind of learn how to cope with it. And there are times where I've had to go see a counselor or to, talk to a friend just about it. And sometimes I don't want to talk to them because it's like, oh, it's that again. I don't want to bother people again but I have a chronic condition. And so I may be chronically talking to you to get support and to share about it. But, having people like my wife who she doesn't know exactly what it's like to have psoriasis, but she's very empathetic and she's a great listener. So having support, church network is supportive. They ask me, how's your skin doing? Sometimes it takes me off guard, but just people checking in. It doesn't really help me if someone says, oh, I know what it's like. I've had this rash, or I had poison ivy or something. I said, well, it's not quite the same. But just to be able to say, what you're going through must be just really difficult or challenging, or is there some way I can kind of help out, these kind of things when you're feeling overwhelmed. Those are things that help me when I'm struggling through. Yeah. It's been great to see more and more people getting involved in blogging and in social media and spreading the word, and I think that we need even more people. And so if you've been helped, or if you've been supported by those who have gone before, who have spoken up, who have put themselves out there, and you feel like you can do that, even just a little bit, even if it's not online, but just locally, getting involved in some way, it makes a difference. One person makes a difference. I started wanting to help one person, and I found out that I did help one person when I helped others, and that was me. And so there's so many different ways that when we help others, that we gain. And so get out there and get involved and help that one person out. Check out my blog at Everyday Health. It's called The Itch to Beat Psoriasis. Just Google it or go on Everyday Health and you'll see. I also have my own website called SoHoward, PSOHoward.com. My Twitter's at HChang316, and I also have the Itch to Beat Psoriasis page on Facebook.